A psalm that we have known, a psalm that we have heard repeatedly throughout life. What psalm is it?
23rd.
You got it, man, you're smart. Now, John, you shouldn't have said anything.
Oh, sorry.
We would have been here all afternoon until we figured it out. So, anyway, he's right. It's Psalm 23rd. Probably the most familiar psalm that we know out of all the psalms, Psalm 23. It's a psalm that we are familiar with. It is a psalm that we have heard many a time. It is the shepherd's psalm, again, Psalm 23, the psalm that has brought comfort to many a soul. They're heard many times at the grave of a loved one, reminding us that new life has just begun, that person no longer here has entered into the eternal state, has left our presence to enter the very presence of God himself. And so this psalm closes with these words, "And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever," reminding us not only of the eternal state, but reminding us of the great God we call our shepherd. David, though a shepherd himself, communicates to us how he needed to be shepherded by God. Though he was a shepherd, he tells us that God was the one shepherding him throughout his life. Through every valley, upon every mountain top, it would be God who would be with him. He would never leave him or forsake him throughout his life's journey. And so we take a look at this psalm, which has been dear to many in life. Someone has quoted this, after quoting this psalm, remarked with these words. He says, "This is my creed. This is my desire. I desire no other. I learned it at my mother's lips and have repeated it every morning when I awake for the last 20 years. Yes, I do not half understand it. I am only beginning now to spell out its infinite meaning, and death will come on me with the task unfinished. But by the grace of Jesus, I will hold on to this psalm as my creed. I will strive to believe it, to live it, for I know that it will lead me to the cross. It will guide me to glory." And that's exactly what he says in this psalm. The ending verse of this psalm, he says, "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." I mean, here God gives us a promise, and related to David himself, that God would take care of him all the days of his life. Not only all the days of his life, but throughout all eternity as well. Just like he took care of us all the days of our life, he will take care of us for all eternity as well. And really, that is the testimony of one whom this psalm has had an impact. And as we think of this psalm has made and had an impact upon many over the centuries. Given some probably 3,000 years ago, this psalm has made an impact on everyone that has heard it. Just like we said this morning, what is the most familiar psalm that we know? It's probably Psalm 23. And just as we know that Psalm 23 is probably the most familiar and popular psalm that we know, just think of the impact that that psalm has had for some 3,000 years upon individuals traveling through this life. Penned first by David, a shepherd himself, realizing that though he was a shepherd, he needed, just like he aided those sheep and watched over them, that he needed God's watch care in his life as well. He needed the shepherd to guide and meet his everyday needs. Just like the person that we quoted this morning, though he had read this psalm some 20 years, he said, "I have not even exhausted it or even come to the depth of its meaning." First given to me, he said, by my mother, came from her lips and became a part of my memory. And every year for 20 years I've rehearsed that psalm, and yet I've not come to the depths of its meaning. So for the next 20 years, you know what you're going to hear every Sunday? A sermon on Psalm 23, okay? But really, as we look at the scripture, there is great depth in the scripture. And we're going to have the introduction today, because that's all we're going to get to. Because there's other portions in this psalm that relate to our life and things that we can relate to in everyday life that really we need and God provides. And that's what we're going to look at today. So that David could say with countless others, as we can say ourselves, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. Came across these words that I found. It says this: it has comforted the noble host of the poor. It has sung courage to the army of the disappointed. It has poured balm and consolation in the heart of the sick. It has visited the prisoner and broken his chains, and like Peter's angel was led him forth in imagination and sung him back to his home again. It has made the dying Christian slave freer than his master, and consoled those whom dying he left behind mourning. Not so much that he was gone, as because they were left. Nor is its work done. It will go on singing on through all the generations of time. And it will not fold its wings till the last pilgrim is safe and time ended. It shall fly back into the bosom of God, whence it issued and sounded out, mingled with all those harmonies of celestial joy, which make heaven's music forever. I'm sure just as this psalm has been beloved throughout the ages, remember the book of Psalms is a book of not only worship, but it is a book of songs. And I'm sure this is one of the songs that we will sing for all eternity. The fact that God was our shepherd. The fact that he watched over us all the days of our life, from birth to death. In every situation, every event, whether it was in the valley or upon the mountaintop, that he was there, leading, guiding, directing, supplying our needs as our shepherd. Jesus identifies himself in the book of John as the Good Shepherd. And it is the Good Shepherd that gives his life for the sheep. In Hebrews, he is called the Great Shepherd of the flock. Not only is he the Good Shepherd, but he is the Great Shepherd as well. The book of John seeks to relate some of the attributes and really God to us. And he says, Jesus said, I am the light. I am the light of the world. I am the bread of life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the door. By me, if any man enters in, he will find forgiveness. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd gives his life for the sheep. And 2,000 years ago, the Good Shepherd gave his life for the sheep, providing redemption, salvation, and forgiveness to all that will come to him. Providing salvation to all who will call upon his name for forgiveness and recognition of their need for a Savior. Recognizing that they have sinned against this holy, righteous God, coming to him by faith and asking him for his forgiveness, we see that he makes that life that he lived here effective for us, and we receive God's forgiveness. That Christ died for all, Paul says, especially those who believe. Yes, he died for all, but there has to be there has to be a faith that is placed in him so we can obtain that salvation. And so we come into that point of salvation as we recognize our need and call upon him. For whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. This is truly a pilgrim psalm. With it, he journeys through life. This is a psalm that we can take with us not only today, but throughout all our earthly pilgrimage. Whether in the valley or upon the mountaintop, he knows with all confidence of soul that this Lord in whom he believes is his shepherd. No matter if we are in the valley of despair, no matter if we are on the top of the mountain rejoicing, yet we know with all confidence that this shepherd is our shepherd, and that with all confidence, as David did, we can say as well, just that simple phrase, the Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is the one shepherding me. He is the one taking care of me, and with all confidence knowing in our souls that he will never leave us nor forsake us. When will his job be done? Well, when we close our eyes in death, his earthly part is done, but it is never done because he will take care of us for all eternity. Taking care of our every need throughout his life here on this earth. It is Jehovah taking care of his need. It is Jehovah who is keeping him safe. It is Jehovah who is leading and guiding him. It is Jehovah who with him he goes through the darkest, deepest hours of life. And it is Jehovah who will safely lead him home. I love getting off the expressway on 290, and I love exiting on Lake Street. And if you've ever been on Lake Street, you wonder why. It made me laugh this morning. For the first time in 20 years, you know what they have out there? Did you go down that way? Who went that way today?
Not today.
So I came off the expressway. You know what the sign says? Rough road. Rough road? What do you mean? It's been rough road for 20 years. And finally someone gets the light and they put the sign out? Yeah, it's still rough road with all the patch upon patch upon patch. And I'm thinking, every Sunday I go down this road, when are they ever going to fix it? It never gets fixed. For 20 years or more, I've been going down that road. And finally, someone had the light to put on the right sign, rough road. What are they going to do about the rough road, you know? But you know what? That's how life is sometimes, right? Sometimes we go down some pretty rough roads. And David says, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Not death itself, I am in the shadow of death, to the point where I believe my life is going to be taken. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he says, you know what? I will fear no evil. Even though it seems like today's my last day, and my life will end because of the circumstances I may be going through. Yet he says, you know what? I'm going to fear no evil. You know why I'm going to fear no evil? Because I have confidence. I have confidence like you and I can have in the great God who is shepherding our souls. So we begin not just with mere words, but with a real living relationship with the living God. Psalm 23 is just not mere words. It's a real relationship with a real God. So that David could point his finger heavenward and say these words, as we can say ourselves, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. It is one of the compound names of Jehovah. We've looked at some of those in the Old Testament. And one of the compound names, he takes two individual names and he puts together, and many times in relating to a person's need. Okay, what was the need of Gideon? His need that he was a very timid person. He was not secure in himself. And what Gideon needed was peace. So God reveals himself to Gideon as Jehovah Shalom. Then we come to Abraham, and Abraham is told to take his son, Isaac, and to offer him upon an altar. All of a sudden there, the angel of the Lord stops him from taking his son's life. He provides a goat, it says, in the thicket, and there he reveals himself to Abraham as Jehovah Jireh. The Lord will provide, or in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Well, what did God supply? Not only did he supply the goat for Abraham for sacrifice that day, but it is the same place that Solomon built his temple, the Temple of Solomon. It was the same place that there was an ultimate sacrifice made in the Mount of Moriah. In the Mount of the Lord it shall be provided. In the Mount of the Lord it shall be seen. And what did we see in the Mount of the Lord? As God had promised thousands of years before, it was Christ hanging upon a cross, dying for the sins of humanity. Then we come to Exodus and we find another name for God, that God is the God who heals. And we come to Jeremiah, Jehovah Zidkenu, the God of our righteousness. And so we see related to us these compound names of God. You know what the compound name of God is here? Jehovah Raphi, which means the Lord is my shepherd. In each one of those instances, we see that God provides something for an individual according to their need. And what is the need here? The need is that we need a guide. We need somebody to, you think you're doing it on your own. Don't fool yourself, okay? Oh man, I got a job and I get up every morning, this is great, I got an education, I got this and that. Don't fool yourself, okay? Don't fool yourself because you're not doing it on your own. It is God who is shepherding you. It is God that providing for you. It is God taking care of you. It is God who gives you strength and energy each and every day. It is God who is taking care of you and watching over you. Even maybe we don't recognize it every day, which we should, but it is the Lord who is taking care of us and will take care of us forever. So here we have one of these compound names of God. Whenever you come to the small letters in capital L-O-R-D in the scripture, you'll see it here. If you have the Bible open, you see L-O-R-D in small caps. It's capital letters, but in small print. And every time you see that here in the New Testament, in the Old Testament, it is the word for Jehovah. Jehovah is his name. Again, it was so held in awe that the Jews substituted for some lesser name for God. Whenever it occurred in public reading, they would never say the name of Jehovah. Only once a year was it pronounced, and that on the Day of Atonement by the high priest in the most holy place. Who is Jehovah, the Lord? The Lord Jehovah means the living one. He is self-existent. He is the I am. He is he who was and is to come. He inhabits eternity. Who has life in himself. He alone is self-existent. He is the mighty being, is our shepherd. Who is Jehovah? He is the self-existent Holy One of Israel, the covenant-keeping God. In Exodus we see that he comes and he makes a covenant, a promise to the nation. And this is the God who stands behind this great promise. He is the God of eternity. the self-existent one who needs nothing outside himself to exist. He is the Holy One. There is none holy beside him. He is eternal in his being. He is the God who we can rely upon because he keeps his covenant and his promise. The psalmist in Psalm 80 writes these words, "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, thou that leadest Joseph like a flock, thou that dwellest between the cherub, shine forth." Shine forth. What is he talking about, shine forth? Well, it came to me this morning as I was sitting there, and you try up since 5 o'clock, and I was sitting in the chair in the living room up in the front of the house. You look outside, it's a little gloomy. By 5:30, it's like, does it look like rain today? But it's not going to rain, right? And all of a sudden, you see this bright thing coming up. It's called the sun. And it shines forth. Every day, it shines forth. I mean, one time I was on Tui, and certain times of the season, going east, you can't even hardly see the road in front of you. That sun is so bright. It shines forth. And so what is the psalmist saying? Shine forth. Shine forth in our life. And has God shined in our life? Has the reality of God been real in our everyday life? Yes, it was real in the nation of Israel, and it's real in our life as well. His shining forth in his brightness and its power. We see God displayed in life. And so he did shine forth as a testimony to the living God, to his people, the children of Israel. Did God shine into their life? Was God real to the nation of Israel? Is God real to us? Is he a real God? Is he the God of many that don't hear or see or don't speak? People worship this God that they never get an answer from, that they can go through the motions of prayer maybe 6 times a day and still not get an answer of peace and rest or direction in their life. Is he a God, not only that the world bows down to some image that they made, or even looking up to the sun, worshiping the sun as a God, worshiping nature? Who is this God? Is he real, and is he and can he be real in our life? Well, Psalm 78 gives the reality of God in the nation of Israel. Verse 12 says, "Marvelous things did he in the sight of our fathers in the land of Egypt. He divided the sea. He caused them to pass through. He made the waters to stand on a heap. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. He clave the rock in the wilderness. He gave them drink out of the great depth. He brought streams also out of the rock and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. They tempted God in their hearts by asking meat for their lust." I think this is where they got the Wendy's commercial, "Where's the beef?" So anyway, God supplied the beef, but it wasn't quite beef, it was quail that day. Different menu. "Yea, they spoke against God and said, Can God furnish a table in the wilderness?" Good question. Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Is that an easy question? Yeah, it's an easy question. Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Okay, we're going to have a picnic today. You know where the picnic's going to be? It's going to be in the wilderness. Okay, I don't want you to bring anything. I'm not supplying the food either. God's going to supply the food. Can God furnish a table? Can he take care of us in the wilderness? Wait, he did. 40 years. Wait, what do you get out of the wilderness? You're looking for your next water hole. What are you planting? You got some tomato plants you're planting in the wilderness? I don't think so. It gets really hot during the day and probably pretty cold at night. I don't think your tomato plants are going to survive there. Not only is it not a time of harvest that you're going to grow anything there, but you're constantly moving throughout this wilderness for 40 years. Can God take care of you in a wilderness where you have no resources whatsoever? Well, you got your IRA, right? You got your cell phone, right? You open it up and you go to your bank account. Wow, let's let some money. The month isn't even over yet. It's a miracle. I got some money left, right? $3, right? Okay, what did they have? What did they have? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And God took care of them. Hey, we're getting sick and tired of this manna. The stuff that tastes a little like sweet stuff and coated with honey. We're sick and tired of it. Where's the meat? Where's the beef? And God supplies quail. It says they rained the quail down from heaven. You know when the manna stopped? The manna did not stop until 40 years later when they entered into the promised land and they began to eat the fruit of the land. God said, you know this land I'm giving you? It's not like any other land. There's the early and latter rains that I'm going to take care of. I'm going to send you the early and latter rains in their precise seasons. And I am watching over this land, taking care of it. You know that land today, though not inhabited, is now inhabited. And the land, as you read Isaiah, that land that was a desert, even in the land of Israel, has become fruitful. It is exactly what God has said in the book of Isaiah. He has turned the wilderness into vegetation and fruit and everything else. That fruit supplies and that vegetation supplies much of the food in Europe. I mean, if you ever ate Jaffa fruit, the best fruit you've ever eaten, the best fruit that you've ever eaten comes from Israel. Hey, God takes care of it. And not only did God take care of it today, he takes care of it and he takes care of his people even when they had nothing at all. Then we have the word shepherd. Again, we see in this Psalm 78, that it was God who was taking care of them every step of the way. This precious word for God was uttered first by Jacob himself, once a shepherd. Jacob was a shepherd, and as he lay dying, his thoughts of old age brought him back to the imagery of his early life, speaking of God as having shepherded him all his life long. You know what Jacob said on his deathbed? He said, it was God who shepherded me all throughout life. I was a shepherd, but I'll tell you, as David could say himself, I was a shepherd, but there was someone watching over me, shepherding me, and that was God himself. In Revelation, we read the words, the Lamb shall lead them to living fountains of water. The Lamb who led his flock, he will lead his flock to the waters of life. The primary meaning of the word shepherd means to feed, to lead, to pasture, as a shepherd does his flock. And so he does it. Is as the task of a shepherd, and that's what we have set forth in this psalm. What is it that a shepherd does? We see it in Psalm 23. The year 1889, F.B. Meyer wrote a book on Psalm 23. So we have quite a few years. 1889, this book was penned by F.B. Meyer. He wrote a lot of books, wrote a volume on James that's about 2.5 inches thick. But here's what F.B. Meyer writes in 1889. O trembling heart, look away and look up. Your sorrows have been multiplied indeed. By looking at your difficulties and second causes, now cast from all this, talk no more about the walled cities and giants, about the rugged paths and the dark valleys, about the lions and robbers, but think of the love, the might, and the wisdom of the shepherd. Love that spared not its blood, might that made the worlds, wisdom that named the stars. Your salvation does not depend on what you are, but on what he is. For every look at self, he says, take 10 looks at Christ. I mean, isn't that where we get caught up? Isn't that where we focus most? We look at self, right? And we look at all the difficulties, the lions, the robbers, and all these causes of my difficulty in life. And you know what he says? For every time that you look at your problems, take 10 looks at Christ. No, because we focus on ourselves instead of remembering that it is God who's taking care of us. See this leg here? It's swollen. I got to show it to you, right? I won't show it to you. But it's swollen because I went in the yard and I hit something. So what are you going to focus on? This here? No, he says, for every time you focus on this, focus 10 times on what God has done for you. Okay? And we do that, right? What is our focal point in life? It is on ourselves. And he said we're to get our focus off of ourselves and put our focus where it belongs. Where does the focus belong? On God. Who here today does not have some difficulty that they're going through? Who has not gone through the valley of despair? Who has not gone through difficulty? Who has not, life has not touched you in some adverse way? Wait a minute, we focus on that. Some people take that with them the rest of their life. And so after it's even healed, they say, hey, come here. You see that? I got a scar now. Come here. Steve, come here. You see the scar? It's healed now. It doesn't hurt no more. But for the rest of their life, you know what they're saying? Come over here. I want to show. Oh, come here. Look at my scar. Hey, get your focus off yourself and put your focus where it belongs. Where does your focus belong? On yourself? Hey, you're not going to be a happy person if you're focusing on yourself. Oh, look at my wounds. Look at what they said about me. Look at what they did to me. Come here, everybody. Look, look, look. The spotlight is on you, and guess what? You're not a happy person because you're focusing on the wrong thing. For every time he says you focus on your own problems,